Morning, everybody. Welcome to our council work session for February 21st. Scott, let's quickly turn it over to you and let's get to going.
Okay, we had a few topics that have been briefly brought up at different times on neighborhood services topics. So I asked Sue Ann, Donovan, and Chris to put together some presentations and to, in a couple cases, really start the conversation on some policy changes that would make a lot of sense. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Sue Ann.
Oh, doc. Source, sorry, my fault.
And I just did one slideshow because I was lazy.
And you know what, I forgot my...
So today we're going to cover, we've talked about this before, but trailers that are stored on city streets without a tow vehicle. We also want to talk about rental code amendment to require carbon monoxide detectors and to require inspections of heating sources. So we're going to start with trailers parked and stored on city streets. The problem remains that we find unattended, unattached trailers on city streets. We don't believe that city streets should be used as parking lots for trailers without a tow vehicle. Residents have complained about trailers being left unattended, and one of the goals would be to increase tickets for unattended trailers from $15 to $50 a ticket. So the current ordinance for trailers prohibits parking of a motor truck having a freight capacity of greater than 1 ton, or any trailer, semi-trailer, tractor, road tractor, truck tractor, on any portion of a street abutting a residentially zoned district. So these districts are the N districts right now. So a proposed resolution, we would like to keep the provision regarding weight of trailers on residential streets. That keeps semi-trailers from being parked and driven on residential streets that aren't truck routes and protects the integrity of our streets so they don't deteriorate with the heavy load. We'd like to amend Chapter 114-64 to prohibit trailers to be parked on city streets unattended with a tow vehicle, without a tow vehicle in any zoning district. So I know that Councilmember Westergaard had some concerns up on, I think it was Broadway, where semi-trucks were, Easton, dropping their trailers, pulling away the tow vehicle and just leaving them parked there until they wanted to use them again. We don't think that our streets should be used for that type of activity. An exception we'd like to build in would be work trailers that were parked from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for use at an active construction site. For instance, when I had my roof done, they would pull the trailer up in front, detach, get the materials in and out of it, then they could run to lunch, come back, but at the end of the day they packed up and took it away. So I think we ought to allow active construction sites when they can't park off the street to be able to use the trailer there. Again, raise the fine for tickets from 15 to 50. So I'm going to pause and right now and get feedback on this particular portion of the presentation, and then I'll move into the next.
I would like to have feedback. I'm looking at it on Google Maps. It's from Easton Boulevard from University until you get up to East 19th. And on Google Maps, you can see there are trailers parked there on this Google map. But there seems to be a pattern of 3 or 4 trailers, some of them with their cabs, some without, and they will be there all weekend. Mm-hmm. My confusion is that I've talked to the police, and the police have said, no, they can't be there, because on the north side of the street is all residential. On the south side, there's really nothing, it's just the freeway. There are green signs, and then I've talked to zoning, I've talked to traffic and transportation. I think the last memo I got from traffic and transportation said that is a truck route. That is not true. They are green signs. You don't get into the truck until you get to DeWolf. And I went out and I took pictures of all of these, but I can't, I mean, does our traffic and transportation not understand? Or where is the confusion that the police say you can't be there, then traffic says you can, and, you know, they've sent me the ordinance, but they are green signs. They are not truck route signs.
Yeah, I think you're correct. They are not supposed to be there. I think there's some confusion with the language on the N districts. We want to take that out. That would allow NID to write tickets, zoning can write tickets, and police can write tickets. But traffic and transportation doesn't write the tickets. We're the ones out there that have to do the enforcement. This just clarifies it, so there isn't any question about where they can and can't park. If that tractor with the trailer is there for more than 24 hours, it needs a ticket. It shouldn't be there. But this clarifies for everybody who's in the field what exactly is going on. That's what we want, is clarification.
And there's no business. I mean, it's not like they've got a parking lot. It's just the freeway. And, I mean, the neighborhood doesn't want them there.
Correct, yep.
And you know, for 2 years, I've been trying to get this done.
Yep, and this is the language that we've
Okay.
come up with. This is the language we would like to bring forward for council.
Okay.
I've had similar requests from neighborhood associations, especially over there in the Pioneer Park area,
Yep,
where we've had the same violator constantly, always leaving the trailer parked out on the street. And so, I mean, I think this is a good change. I would be supportive of it.
okay, so we will bring this one forward.
Thank you.
So the next thing we need to talk about is carbon monoxide detectors. So HUD has issued some rules for us to follow that says that rental units that receive federal assistance will have to have CO detectors. HUD is requiring them no later than December 27th of 2022. So that's this year. They have to be in by December for those units to continue to receive the subsidies. We don't currently have a requirement in our rental code for carbon monoxide detectors. So the purpose of the mandate from HUD's perspective and from our perspective is the harmfulness of CO. It's odorless, colorless, toxic. It builds up due to incomplete combustion of fuel. It can poison people, cause all sorts of harmful health conditions, brain damage, cardiac, fetal death. People who are asleep might die from CO poisoning before experiencing any symptoms. So the current state law requires CO detectors, but it puts it on the state fire marshal to administer, and or a local safety official should be responsible. So at this point, we feel like we should take it on and maybe adopt it in our rental code. So the potential issue is that HUD is now requiring carbon monoxide detectors in subsidized rental uses. We don't want those owners to choose to opt out of the subsidized rental program because of the specific requirement for HUD. And so what we'd like to do is have it be an across-the-board requirement that does increase safety of all residents in rental units. And it puts everybody then at the level playing field. So what we'd like to do is require all owners of multi-unit residentials, duplexes, and single-family rental units to supply and install the required carbon monoxide alarms. We would then begin to inspect them as a requirement of our rental code, and then that would also comply with the federal and state law. We would require installation by December 27th of 2022 for subsidized units, and then require all other rental units to install by the next renewal inspection. There's kind of two reasons for this. We know we have to do the subsidized units. That's, mandated by HUD. But we also feel that asking every rental unit in the city to all of a sudden get carbon monoxide may overload the supply chain. So we kind of want to be able to ease that in for the rest of the units so that we know that there's going to be enough detectors for everyone. Just as an example, I looked it up on Amazon, and they're about $25, $30.
Yeah, I know.
They're not very expensive, but we don't want to overload the supply chain by creating this all of a sudden surge of CO detectors. So I'm going to pause here for thoughts and discussion.
How long, I mean, some of these renewals are on 5-year cycles, right?
2.5.
2.5? So everything's going to be done within a 2.5-year cycle then?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's the phasing? Okay. I mean, I think it makes sense to move forward with this, so I'm supportive.
I would support it too. It's
Okay.
not that big a cost and the savings, I mean, saving a life is worth.
Right.
Sue Ann, would this be replacing a standard smoke detector with one that does both?
You could, if they choose to, put in a combination detector, or they could keep the smoke detectors they currently are using and just add a supplemental CO detector where it's required.
Okay. And the price difference for a combination, do you have any idea?
I don't think they're that much different in price. So somebody may choose just to,
Aren't most of them now also CO2 or?
I think a lot of them are. I think because new building construction requires them, that they're more readily available. Since we haven't required them, people can still choose and do just to get the regular smoke detector and not mess with the carbon part of it.
Right. I think even though they're labeled different companies, I think there's really just one company that makes all of them, so,
That could be just
Yeah,
different
so,
labels on it.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I take it we're okay with moving this one forward? Okay. Last one's going to be a little more tricky. So heating inspections and loss of heat. We had several boilers going down over the winter months. In some cases, tenants seemed unable to get repairs completed for their buildings and units. Seems like mechanical parts are scarce, causing delays in completing repairs. This is just what I'm hearing, so. We also know that space heaters are not safe supplemental heat sources. They can overload an electrical system if you have, 12 units and everybody all of a sudden is using space heaters. It can overload and cause flash fires, and we don't want to have that happen. We have other concerns with aging heat sources. Again, the carbon monoxide concern due to worn out, poorly adjusted and maintained combustion devices, including boilers and furnaces. We want to make sure the flue is properly sized, nothing's blocked or disconnected, or a flue is leaking. We also have, generally the lack of energy efficiency with aging heat sources. And we want to make sure that owners and managers ensure that combustion equipment is maintained and properly adjusted. Now, you'll remember we also brought to you the separation of heating sources with forced air, so that's still going forward. If we choose to do something additionally, I want to add it into that ordinance before I bring it back to you. So that's kind of why we're bringing it up now. So we do have some suggested code amendments. We're trying to figure out how to make sure that these older units, boiler units, are operating efficiently, and hopefully we'll make it through a heating season without a repair. So we thought maybe an idea would have a trained professional perform annual inspections, clean it, tune it. Owners of boilers would have to have them look for any signs of leaking, corrosion, overheating, structural issues, look at the water blow off, the water connections, the steam areas, and then report the inspection and proof of repairs provided to NID before a heating season or before the boiler is fired up, which is usually in October-ish, they start to fire them up. This is a sort of probably not a perfect solution to what occurred over the winter, but we were hoping that by having inspections, at least the owners would be ahead of the game rather than having something crack or break during an extreme cold spell and then not be able to get the part.
Do you have enough staff to do this?
We aren't doing the inspections.
Oh, okay.
No, it'd be a third party outside. So they'd have to hire a professional
They have to
boiler
hire
They have to.
inspector.
and turn in the inspection?
Yes, yep. Yeah.
What does the state, what's the state requirement?
There are some boiler requirements at the state level. They don't seem to go to this level of detail with the boiler systems that we're looking at. It appeared when I did the research that they were looking at larger commercial boiler systems for industrial type.
So this
And
would
these
be a more enforcement than what the state requires?
I believe so, yeah.
Well, after hearing from people this winter, I mean, it shouldn't get to the point. I mean, it was really unsafe conditions. People have had to move out. And whether it's a yearly or whatever, I think there needs to be some requirement for making sure things are inspected for safety when you have multiple apartments.
Well, I mean, I think this is just a best practice from a maintenance perspective anyway. I mean, so I think a lot of the responsible building owners are probably getting annual maintenance and tune-up. The other piece that this helps accomplish, I mean, when a boiler or furnace system is not inspected and not tuned up annually, it's going to run less efficiently. So I think we accomplish a really important safety function with this requirement, and we also, I think, help a little bit with energy efficiency. So I'm supportive. I know we've had a lot of, maybe not a lot, but several of these issues in some of the older apartments in Sherman Hill and in the, University Drake neighborhood area. So providing some recourse for, and perhaps heading this off in advance so that there are either fewer of these or we have a better way to get a handle on it, I think makes a lot of sense. And it also, I think doing it this way, if we have a problem going forward with a unit, I mean, they're only going to be maybe a handful that we get complaints on, hopefully, and then we can check those units going forward as we enter the winter season to make sure they've complied with something like this.
Sue Ann, I want to just say thanks for responding to some of the weekend calls that we got. Why do furnaces only break down on the weekend? Or boilers?
Fridays and
But
weekends.
anyway, thanks so much for responding
Yeah.
On the weekend to some calls, so.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, the issues were a lack of parts, like, because I know that there was at least one situation where, like, it happened twice in this winter.
It did in one building, it happened twice. They fixed it in November. And then it broke again, I think, in December. And that time I was told there was a part that they had to go get, and the owner actually drove to Cedar Rapids on Monday to get it back. I don't know if it was the same part that broke. I don't know if it was a different issue. I don't know if it was, duct taped together and then it finally broke again. I just don't have the specifics on that one.
Okay, do we have any way to, like, anything that we can do, like, after the fact, right? Actually, we require them to have these yearly inspections, but, like, if it breaks in the winter, like, do we have any way to, like, respond to that faster? Anything stricter that we can do about that?
Well, it's sort of tricky. In the instance one of the instances, I did call the manager on Sunday and said, hey, get it fixed. And he said he had somebody out there and it was repaired, which wasn't true, because Monday when we went out, the boiler company was actually there working. If we want to take him to court on a fine, most likely the judge is going to say, well, it's fixed. It wasn't his fault it broke. He didn't do it on purpose, and he did fix it, so we're not going to be able to get a fine for something that was not of their own making and that they repaired it. So that's sort of off the table. I've thought about this, trust me. This isn't, I've thought a lot about it. I don't know if we could take him to Housing Appeals Board and get a fine, but even then, the Housing Appeals Board is going to have the same quandary as the judge. Well, he didn't know it was going to break, and now you want to punish him for something he fixed. So that's where we get into that.
Yeah. I just think that having something like this then helps offset it because it's making them do the inspection if they aren't doing the inspections. And if you have an inspection, you know that there's issues with it, then when it goes down, I don't know if you would have, therefore you couldn't say, I didn't know it.
I mean,
Yeah,
unless you have a friend who inspects boilers and is just going to give you a check mark as a favor or something.
Well, I think the boiler inspector's also going to have to put their name on the line that
Yeah.
this thing is operational at the level it should be. And if it isn't, maybe we move them into telling the owner, this thing isn't going to make it, you need to replace it. At some point, we have somebody saying, I can't keep duct taping this back together and look for parts that don't exist anymore.
Is there a way to like speed up the process where you change their inspection timeline? So like in this like situation where there was something was fixed but it wasn't, or like heat was out for a certain period of time, is there a way to like instead of waiting for their next inspection and then like deciding if they're going to be on the year and a half or the shorter timelines, is there a way to just say like there's a strike and you're on a lower timeline?
Well, it would come up on their reinspection as a valid complaint during the last inspection cycle, which could shorten the next inspection cycle and put them on a shorter cycle. So essentially, that's what we're doing is saying, you didn't manage it correctly, so we're going to come back, in 18 months instead of, 2.5 years, and we're going to be back here. And you have to do your annual boiler inspection at the same time. So it sort of counts in that, reinspection being shortened. I think that's kind of what you're looking for.
I have a question. Do we know, are some of these places running boilers that are 40, 50 years old?
I would assume so, yes.
And,
They're past their life expectancy.
yes. And, is there something that we can do from a code perspective to require, if there's a 50-year-old boiler that's being patched together, we know that's not meeting our efficiency requirements. So it's problematic in that regard. We know it's a greater risk. Can we maybe start requiring a certain vintage to upgrade as a condition of a rental license, upgrade the equipment if you have something that is X number of years old?
I started to go that direction myself with that thought process. Kind of what I'd like to do is use this to get a baseline of what we think the boiler situation is out there. We'd at least get 1 or 2 seasons of inspections. Because, we're doing it now. They're going to have to do it by the end of summer before they turn it back on. We can get an estimate of the age. We can get an estimate of the numbers that are out there, because we don't really even know how many there are. And then maybe if this doesn't go as far as we want it to, we can say, okay, boilers have a life expectancy of 40 years, so anything over 40 years that doesn't pass some matrix has to be replaced. But I'd like to get some data. I'd like to get some, something on paper where we can say, well, we got 15 of these, and this is sort of where we're at, if that makes sense.
Just making them do an inspection is a step forward. And because this will be what's interesting is how many even do inspections.
You're obviously going to have the requirement that it is a license.
Yes. Yep.
Someone that has a...
Iowa licensed plumbing and mechanical contractor.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So it can't just be
Joe Blow.
me come check Josh's and say, yeah.
We're not going to let you do that.
Okay, then we're good.
Is there a requirement to have it done before winter months?
Yes.
Okay,
Before they fire it back up.
gotcha, okay.
Yep.
It is very true. Parts were very difficult to get.
Yep.
And probably still are. I waited over October, November for a part for a heater, 6 to 8 weeks. So.
Yeah,
that-
and I think
that is
as
definitely a true
the
statement.
models are older too, then it's going to be harder to get the
Yes.
part, because you either have to make it or scrounge to find it.
Yeah, it was a
Sue
war.
Ann, if there's a property that doesn't have heat, are the tenants, can they break their lease and say, I can't live here with my kids and whatever, and,
Well, I don't want to give landlord-tenant advice. I don't want to give advice
Okay.
standing at the podium about what somebody can or can't do.
okay,
There
well,
are,
we can talk afterwards.
we can talk afterwards, and I know there are ways for these things to be resolved. It's not up to the city, it's up to the tenant. And I always tell them to go to Home Incorporated to get advice or legal aid to get advice
Okay.
on what their remedies are at that point.
But what, you are saying that a space heater is not a solution?
No, I was told quite adamantly by the fire department that that wasn't good. It's not adequate. It's also a safety hazard.
Okay, got
I
it.
mean, if you have electrical and you plug in, this was the example that was given to me. You plug in a space heater and your daughter is in, or son is in the restroom, plugging in the blow dryer, you can have overload of the circuit and cause a fire in the electrical service. So too many space heaters in a building could create fire hazards. So
Where the electrical service may be in the same condition that the boiler is.
correct.
In most cases, probably not.
Well, wouldn't it be true if I put a new furnace in, I have to pull a permit
Correct.
to do that? And if I do that, they're going to look at the electrical.
Sure.
So requiring somebody to put in a new furnace is going to prompt lots of other things, because you can't go in and just fix part of it.
It certainly can.
This might be the same answer of like, going to legal aid or something, but are we able to require, landlords that like have a building where the heat is out to like provide alternative like living conditions for their tenants, since they're not, like, it's illegal to like not have heat in your building?
We thought that one through also. It's problematic because it would fall back on us to pay for it if the landlord wouldn't, and then we'd have to collect from the landlord. Not saying that that's off the table, we got to think it through. We got to think it through at, 2 o'clock on Saturday morning when we get the call. Are we going to have staff all of a sudden get out of bed and go out and find motel units? Do we have a cap on the cost of the motel unit? Do we say you can stay at the Hilton and have room service, or do you have to stay at Motel 6, which isn't necessarily good either, by the way, but in my opinion. So we haven't worked through all of those different scenarios on how the city would be involved. That might be a remedy that they can talk to legal aid or Home Incorporated about, because there might be a way to do it through the landlord-tenant law that we don't have much to do with. We try to stay out of the landlord-tenant relationship.
Yeah.
You
I guess it's just a matter of like making sure people have somewhere, like if there's a part out and it takes 5 days,
Yep.
like in this situation, like dishes were like frozen in the sink type of thing, you know what I mean? Because it was
Yep.
like out for so long. So I would like to explore that if that's a possibility.
We've started, we'll continue to work on that angle. We just haven't figured out how to make it work. I would assume they could also call Red Cross and maybe or Salvation Army has emergency housing options, so maybe they could call Red Cross or Salvation Army and get housing through them as an emergency.
I think Polk County has an emergency,
Polk County has
Yeah.
some emergency funding.
so we need to look and see, because I think Polk County has, and I don't know if it's senior or if it's for everyone, but I think they have an area that does help.
Not done with that,
Okay,
but just haven't figured out how to make it work yet.
thanks.
Can I, if we're done here, can I go back? Pam Kutzke just sent me an email saying that that part of Easton is a truck route. And my question is, if it's a truck route, why doesn't it have a truck route sign? I don't understand. See, that's the confusion. We're saying it's a truck route, but it's not signed a truck route.
Well, and I
This
don't-
ordinance will take care of it.
Is it in the neighborhood? Is it
Yes.
in the N2 districts or N1 or outside of it?
Yeah, one side, the other side is the
Well, then
freeway.
but then this ordinance would cover that,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, but the confusion has always been, I've been trying to get this, and, I mean, I just got this email from you, and you're saying, no, it's a truck route. Why do we think it's a truck route? Because it's not signed a truck route.
I'll find out why it isn't signed correctly, but I also don't believe just because it's truck route, it allows them to park trailers and use it as a parking
No,
lot.
I don't either, but
That's-
that's part of the frustration, is that
Yeah.
I've gone through so many departments
Yep.
with people saying, yes, you can park there, no, you can't park there.
Let me bring that together and get a consolidated answer.
It's not signed. I've got,
And if it isn't signed, we need to get it signed correctly.
it's not signed.
Okay.
All right. I think we've covered two of the issues. Do you have more,
No, I think we're
Joanne?
done. That's
all
three.
three.
I have a question about the first presentation. You said an exception would be work trailers from 7 AM to 10 PM on an active construction site. Is that like on residential streets they would be allowed to park?
Right, and were you here when I gave the example about my house having we were re-roofing it?
No.
And so they
I
parked the
see.
trailer on the street while they were doing the roofing and siding, because they didn't have any other where to stage. But then at the end of the day, they loaded up and pulled it away.
Okay.
So it would be allowed to be unattended at an active construction site during the construction.
Okay, I just know there were complaints in Beaverdale around the fairway construction. More of that was like, there had been an agreement that there wouldn't be construction parking on 41st Place, and then there was, and there's been a lot of back and forth about that. So I was just wondering if, but I don't want to like create a situation where you can't get your house fixed up because
Right.
somebody can't park their trailer on the street, so. I don't really know how to.
I don't know about the Beaverdale and the,
Okay.
I can look into that, but I'm not aware of, I haven't heard anything about
There's
it.
a very long email chain, I guess you're not on it.
I'm not on it.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Joanne, thank you.
That was hardly worth it now, babe.
So we don't have a closed session.
What time? 4:30? 4:45? What time? What do we got tomorrow?
Proclamation. Proclamation, but make it 45.
Got your
Yeah.
check. 4:45. Check? Yeah, there's a proclamation. Yeah, there. We get a check.
So we don't have any legal issues coming up that we need to have an early meeting, yeah? Closed session or anything?
Good job, Jeff.
All right, way to go, Jeff.
We do have a proclamation and a presentation of the check from Prairie Meadows at 4:45.
We'll be here for that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.